All right, y'all. So I just got finished doing a YouTube video for my other YouTube channel, and I thought that I would tell you guys about my 2 month update since losing my dad. I actually hate saying like losing my dad because I feel like it adds an extra dose of sadness to what is already a sad situation. So I really should start saying that since my dad transitioned, because I like to think of him as still being here with me. This has been the darkest 2 months of my entire life. I'm not kidding you. I have struggled to just show up every day to do work as a YouTuber, as a content creator, as a trip host. So, in case you don't know, I host group trips to different places. We have a trip coming up next week to go to Thailand, which I will chronicle for you guys as well. Because I also think it's a part of my grief process. I think that God makes no mistakes. This trip was supposed to happen when it was supposed to happen, even though I am a bit anxious about it because I have been with my mom every week just about since my dad passed. I was with her when my dad passed. For those of you guys who don't know, my dad, we found out right 2 days after the election, I think that my dad had lung cancer. And I'll go into that in a different video, but I was on a trip to Mexico. I actually left Mexico early to fly home to be with my mom and my dad. My dad was in the hospital for about a week or so, and then he was released with the idea that he would start radiation and chemotherapy. He had quite a few rounds of radiation, but I was unsure of the amount of chemotherapy that he would have. But the prognosis was good. You know, unfortunately, something happened in between the period of time when he was at home on oxygen and then his lung collapsing and us not knowing that it had collapsed. And, you know, I was with my mom in my dad's final moments as we had gotten him rushed to the hospital. My sister was actually out of town. She was on her way in town already. And my aunt, my dad's sister, was actually in the same city with my sister. So they were able to get together to come up and be with us. It was a very hard process to deal with because, you know, I'm blessed that I'm able to work from wherever I am. And I thank God for that. I had spent the past 2 years almost trying to run away from what it is that I do here on YouTube, not realizing that I could do what I do in a number of ways. Because sometimes the reality TV space, it can feel a little bit toxic. And, you know, I always ask myself, what do I contribute to that, right? And so I have to sort of take a look at that. And that's what I've been kind of looking at over these past couple of years. Which is kind of why I do what I do on my channel differently now than I used to. I think I'm a bit more empathetic, and I just choose to make it a more fun space for myself. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to really tell you guys how I have been doing and how I have been coping with losing my dad, and things that you should know. I will probably break some of these things down in separate videos at some point, but I kind of want to give you the broad picture for right now on what to expect when you lose a loved one like that. I think that the first surprise to me was that the days between when a relative, like someone passes, and the memorial service are a very crucial few days. I did not realize that it also becomes a time period where you are kind of somewhat also entertaining other people. What do I mean by that? I mean that you may find yourself, you know, people will be wanting to come visit. People may want to come and be with you. And that's a very natural thing. I think culturally speaking, it's a thing. You want to be there for someone who has just lost a loved one. But you, as the person who has lost a loved one, have not yet come to terms with it. So it really doesn't allow you the time to process it in any real meaningful way. So you just kind of feel like you're just having interactions with people who are there to comfort you. And it's an interesting space to be. It really, really is. No one talks about that. Like, no one says this is how you will experience things. And it may be different for everybody, but I just remember thinking to myself, I just want to get past this period because, it doesn't allow you a moment to breathe. And maybe that's a good thing because ultimately maybe a lot of us would collapse into depression if we didn't have those people there. So I honestly have to say I'm grateful for it, but it is an adjustment and it is a bit overwhelming when you first have to go through it. Trust and believe. Like, it is no, there's nothing that can prepare you for it. There's nothing that can really prepare you for the fact that the moment your relative dies, I remember the doctor looking at her clock and calling the time, and that's when I knew it was real. And I remember thinking to myself, and I'm looking at my mom, and we're just looking at each other, and it just seemed really unbelievable. And then the business of it all starts. That very moment, you've got to make arrangements with the funeral home. And, I just am so thankful that, my mom and my dad, there were preparations that they had made in advance for this day, like years ago. And it also told me something about their level of thinking as a younger married couple about where they wanted to be at the end of their earthly journey together. And that was a lesson for me. That was a wake-up call in terms of that level of thinking that the two of them had, even earlier on in their marriage, to set these things up for themselves and know where they wanted to be together when they leave, like in terms of them both not being here any longer, where they would be buried. So you've got to deal with a lot of that in the next few days. You're going to have to meet with the funeral home to determine what that's going to look like. What type of service is it going to be? Will there be a wake? Do you want people to come to visit the house? Do you want a sign, a wreath of flowers outside the home? Do you want them to bring extra chairs to your home? For me, I was like, no, we don't want any of it. I will also tell you that I had a little small team that I called them like my little dream team, consisting of my dad's sister, who was an attorney, my sister, obviously, my mom, and my little cousin, who has also lost her mother. I wanted her there specifically because I know she knows what this is like. And she is so super, she's a type A person. I feel like my aunt is a type A personality. I'm very type B, but I'm also at that moment, I had to step up and be something more than what I would maybe typically be. And I knew that I wanted their eyes and ears present when we were meeting with the funeral home so that we weren't talked into anything that we did not want or didn't need. And, even as I reflect back on the conversation, I do wonder, like, did he show us all of the casket options? He just opened up a page and said these were the least expensive, but that was a whole book of stuff. Like, these are the things that I'm asking myself. And it's not that I did not trust the funeral home. It's just that I had heard, there were things that you need to watch out for in these situations. So I'm just giving you that guidance as well. I also want to tell you that I think that, having that small team of people around you will also make the day that you have the service flow a lot easier too. There were quite a few things that went wrong the day of that I just kind of had to either overlook or just not worry about because I really just had to make it through the day. That was my goal. I wanted to make it through the day and I wanted to say something uplifting about my dad. I had certain songs that we had requested that the choir sing. For whatever reason, the person who we had spoken with chose to do other things. I was really annoyed by that, but because we wanted the service to feel spirited like my dad. And the songs that they chose, I just felt like I was slightly annoyed because they weren't the uplifting, like joyful tunes that we had requested. So ultimately I had to let that go, and I just gave a speech that was dedicated to my dad, and I just tried to get through it. I barely remember the burial service. I have not been able to bring myself to go back to the burial location. I know that I need to at some point, but I just haven't been able to bring myself to do it. And then, of course, getting through the repast, where everyone is eating back at the church. That was a smaller affair in terms of it was really just mostly family. I think that the wake was where the day before, where a lot of people really came to express their sympathies, and we appreciated that because they were able to come to the church and do it and not to my mom's home, so that she didn't feel overwhelmed. There is a lot that you have to think about. And then in the weeks following that, I did spend quite a bit of time, again, going back and forth from here to where my mom lives. It's about a 4.5 hour to 5 to 6 hour drive, depending on the day and depending on the time of day and the traffic. I would tell you that if I could give any advice about how to prepare for something like this, is to talk to your parents about like a will, estate planning, getting your name on their bank accounts, even if you're not someone who is authorized to do things, just getting your name attached to it, because I don't know what happens when you lose someone and they have a bank account and your name isn't attached to it. I have heard, based on what I've been finding, is that some people can't even access the funds that their parents or their relatives have had, in a certain institution, because they're not on the account. So that money is just sitting there. And so you want to make sure that, that if there are life insurance policies, you want to understand who the beneficiaries are. You want to know what life insurance policies there are, what retirement plans there are. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done. You've got to get death certificates, and copies of death certificates, because all of these entities will need proof of death. And I will tell you that for the most part, I think that's been the most overwhelming thing, I think, for my mom, because it's just a lot. This is somebody that she has spent 50 years with. And so now you have to think about it, like she's now doing a lot of these things by herself. And I watch my mom and I'm just in awe of her strength. I'm really in awe of her ability to get up every day and soldier through. And, she even tells me, like, you have to go and live your life. And I'm like, for me, there's a bit of guilt there, because I feel like, did I spend enough time with my dad? Did I do all of the right things for him in those last couple of weeks? I don't think that there's a big part of me that I don't know that I ever will feel like I did enough. And I live with that on a day-to-day basis. I really, really do. And one of the things that I did start doing was I started, because I found myself in the car a lot. I found myself driving a lot, hours every week, and I don't mind doing it. It's probably at this point, like I said, more for me than it is for my mom. But something about just being around her makes me feel better, and being able to help her with some of the things that she may need help with. And some of these things she probably doesn't need help with, but it makes me feel better. And I just want to be there with her as much as I possibly can, because I don't want to regret not being there like I do with my dad. And I want to enjoy quiet evenings with her. I've been able to just sit there and we watch movies with me, her, and the dog, and we're just, you know, existing. And it has brought me an immense amount of peace. Even though I have been feeling like there's been like this dark cloud that's been hanging over me. I'm not even gonna lie to you. And I haven't known how to shake it. Um, there have been days where I've just felt like I don't know how I'm going to do any of this. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get on camera and talk to people or be entertaining and or host these trips when I feel like I'm barely functioning. Like I for a while there felt like I was just trying to survive. And I know that there are other people who are feeling the same way. And then also feeling this way in light of everything that's also happening, in the world, in the country, just all of the political stuff. It's just a lot. It just feels really, really heavy. And one of the things that I will feel like I will give you some things that have definitely been helping me. One has been going to church with my mom. I felt like I've been reinitiated in a community of fellow believers, which is super important to me. I grew up in the church. Um, that has, I think, brought me closer, brought my relationship. It's, I think it's been helpful for my relationship with God. I feel like I'm relying on God a lot more, speaking to God a lot more, seeking God a lot more. Um, I have been reading more and more about manifestation and just staying in a space of positivity and gratitude. I think gratitude has been the most helpful. And the other big thing that I did was on a lot of my drives, I would pull out my phone and press record on my Otter app. Now, this isn't anything sponsored, but for me, it has been helpful because Otter will take my speech and it will turn it into text. So every time I was feeling something overly emotional, or I felt like I was having what I would consider a selfish thought, and you will have those moments of feeling something that maybe you feel like you wouldn't want to voice out loud. I've been able to capture those thoughts in the Otter app. And I don't know, I've talked to different people about turning that into a book. But even now, I have my reservations about it because they're my intimate thoughts. And I think one of the things that has prevented me from even being able to do a video like this is that it requires a certain amount of vulnerability. But the other reason for me doing this is also because I've come to realize that I am not the only person who is going through this. And in having a conversation with a good friend of mine and a fellow writing partner who has been really just uh, a joy to work with, but also has been going through her own experiences in her own life with aging parents and being a caretaker, I just realized there are more people out there that don't have answers, that don't have a clue what they should be doing to prepare for moments like this. And I just want to be a voice in this space, not out of sadness and not out of fear, but to normalize talking about what happens when you lose a loved one like a mom or a dad or a close relative or a friend. I thought in dealing with losing one of my best friends, Stephanie, she had an aneurysm and then a stroke, and then she was gone. And this was like about a month after we had gotten back from a trip to Greece together. I have not been able to post that trip because I just haven't been able to go back to those memories. It's every death experience is different, and there's sometimes no way that you can plan for it. But in the instance that you can, I do want to be able to help provide some resources for people who are going through this, or you feel as though it's about to happen. I would say start having those conversations with your family now, knowing, getting paperwork together and putting it in a place where you always know that you have it, either a safe, like a fireproof safe, or a safe deposit box, or just somewhere where everyone knows, and only a few have access to it, and detailing in specific terms where things are supposed to go when that time comes, and what is supposed to be done when that time comes, and ensuring that you have the funds in place to also cover what should happen when that time comes. These conversations may be unpleasant to have, but they do provide you a lot of peace of mind or a lot more peace of mind when you're already going through the emotions of losing a loved one. So, I've been chronicling a lot of my thoughts and feelings on Snapchat, and I just thought, why not chronicle this process on YouTube of, just the honesty of getting, recovering from, I don't even want to call it recovering, because I don't know that, life will never be the same, but maybe it's not supposed to be, because I am a lot wiser now that I have gone through this experience, but I still don't wish it on anyone. But the unfortunate thing is, it's an eventuality for all of us. So if I can do something to help the next person, then I'm going to do it. So I don't know the exact direction that this channel will continue to go in. I will continue to talk about the different things that I experience, whether that's travel, whether that is, additional ways to make income, or whether that is, preparation for, helping people learn how to prepare for transition. I'm just going to do what I can. That's all I can do. And I think it's also especially important right now, to provide a safe space for people who are, dealing with whatever life is throwing at you, and finding ways to help keep you focused on who you are, what you're here to do, what your assignment is, because I firmly believe that this situation is supposed to take me to some other place. And I am supposed to be acting on that. And so that's what I'm doing. So hopefully you will subscribe to the channel if this resonates with you. Again, this isn't meant to be a sad video. This is just meant to be an honest video, and hopefully it resonates with you. And I guess if you have questions about anything, if there are ways that I can provide resources, my email will be in the description of this video, and you can find several ways to get in contact with me. So with that being said, I will update you guys in the next video. There is passport stuff to be done. You guys, I have a crazy story about that, so I will update you guys with that story probably tomorrow. And the journey to Thailand, because that's where we're going for our group trip, what it's like to host group trips, how much money you can make doing this, if it's something that you like to do, and all of that. I'll give you everything. So with that being said, I will catch you in the next video.